just makes an angle at the 8th.
Our roster of experts discuss whether Scotty Scheffler will win his second major of the year.
Obviously, I love Scotty still. I like him anywhere he goes right now. And that sounds like, oh, no kidding, but it fits him.
Coverage of the PGA Championship from Valhalla Golf Club begins tomorrow at 2 Eastern on Channel 92 in the car and on the SiriusXM app.
Quickly sign up online and activate your radio. Sometimes there aren't enough hours in the day, and sometimes there are way too many. So why not fill them with SiriusXM? Think about it. You can wake up with Howard Stern in the morning, let commercial-free music get you through the daily grind, and then wrap it up with news, talk, and comedy on the way home. All you've got to do is visit SiriusXM.com/go to sign up online quickly, or call 844-711-8800 now. And if the day doesn't go faster, at least you know it'll sound much better.
Channels vary by subscription plan.
The SiriusXM app, filled with ad-free music made for everything you do. Mashup channels, workout channels, channels for parties,
or just chilling out and more.
Expertly curated for any mood, occasion, or activity. Extra channels let you discover new music and enjoy even more variety from every decade and music style you love. Plus, you can watch some of your favorite SiriusXM shows with SiriusXM Video. And you can do it all along with listening in your car as part of our music and entertainment plan. Right now, we're offering SiriusXM subscription plans for as low as $6 a month, plus fees and taxes. Call 844-711-8800 to find out more about these amazing offers.
We're blowing up online. Hip Hop Nation connects you to the biggest hits in the game. That's the difference when you're my baby. That's how it is when you just turn up and vibe. Hip Hop Nation, commercial-free hip-hop hits. Channel 44 and the SiriusXM app. To hear these channels, activate your radio by calling 844-711-8800 or visiting SiriusXM.com/go.
There you go now.
I think I'm recording.
Oh, let's see. You gotta get this.
If you've been thinking about buying a home, you need to be in the zone, the home buying zone. You need a game plan to win in this great real estate market. The Big C team at Equity Zone Mortgage has all your bases covered. Whether you're a first-time home buyer, purchasing your dream home, refinancing, consolidating debt, or even considering a reverse mortgage, contact the Big C team at Equity Zone Mortgage today. They have the lowest closing costs, and they'll close your loan on time, guaranteed, or they'll pay your first mortgage payment. And they even have a 3.5% purchase down payment grant that can get you into a home with little money out of your pocket. It doesn't get more clutch than that, folks. Score big on the biggest purchase of your life. Call Equity Zone Mortgage today at 1-800-772-8624. That's 1-800-772-8624. Or apply online at equityzonemortgage.com and tell them Big C sent you as heard on the Big C Sports Podcast. License number 018128868.
Rondo Deportes, Bonjour, Vidi Vici. Let's get ready to rumble. Welcome to the show. My name is Charlton of Big C Sports. This is Big C Sports coming to you worldwide on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to me. And that frog is in my throat. I think I got a frog in my throat because he likes to join the Big C Sports podcast with me. But I'm going to talk with this frog in my throat, if that makes sense to you. I'm going to say a beautiful May the 15th, 2024. Today's show is sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealers, home of the all-new Cadillac Escalade, the standard of the world. When you go by and test drive yours, tell them sit ya, where the good Lord spit ya, if that makes sense to you. And hopefully he has some cough drops. I'm telling you, last night I could barely even talk by the end of the night. I got this thing called allergies, and sometimes they get inside your throat and they want to start doing a dance party of their own. And I take some medication to get rid of them, but sometimes they don't all get rid of. They don't all go away. I'm having a tough time talking today, but I'm going to get through it because the show must go on. Praise God, the show must go on. May lightning strike. Oh, God, I love life. Life is so funny, but sometimes my throat has a mind of its own. I want to say I always produce the show. I direct the topics. I broadcast all the shows. I do all the sound effects based on the platform provided by the agents. We could all use more cough drops and laughter in our lives. I want to say the commercials are done, the stats are provided. I even do the storytelling. And then the play-by-play, the Nikolai Jokic 4-3. Yes! Get the hole in your life. The Joker dropped 40 last night against the good boys from Utah. And Rudy Gobert said, I thought that was the league defensive player of the year. Yeah, they didn't stop the Joker, and that's no joke. I told you Denver was going to win that series, even though they were down 2-0. Now they're up 3-2, so they're going to win that series, in my opinion. As I always tell you, the show is uploaded to 29 podcast applications out of New York City, and then streaming on 4 TV platforms: Xfinity, Comcast TV, Apple TV, Roku TV, and Amazon and Fire TV. Really do appreciate that. And then, as I say, I never missed a show since starting Big C Sports with the crew back in the day at Salem Media. What I also want to make sure I never miss is a chance to pay homage to the Veterans Crisis Hotline, because a mine is a terrible thing to waste, and they really are experienced helping veterans and their loved ones get help. If you know anybody going through issues, you can call the number 800-273-8255. That's 800-273-8255, or you can text 838-255. That's 838-255. If you're online, simply go to veteranscrisisline.net. That's veteranscrisisline.net. And when you do, you want to give us some praise, because we all need somebody to lean on. And it's always nice when somebody's leaning back. Really do appreciate that. Got NBA basketball. You know, the New York Knicks, they got over last night. They had a chance to show the good old boys of Indiana what it's like to play against the New York Knickerbockers when they're at full strength. So New York got the win with them. Also, you know, tonight Boston's going to beat Cleveland. Cleveland has their own issues, and Donovan Mitchell supposedly not going to be playing. Haven't verified that, but I think he's going to be out of tonight's game, so they're going to get knocked out also by Boston. You got Dallas and the Oklahoma City Thunder. Good boys. The Thunder tied that series. They may take the lead again, but I still think Dallas is a better team. But it doesn't matter what I think. What matters is how well they play, and does the ball drop on the hole. I think for Jason Kidd, the coach for the Dallas Mavericks, you got to be able to tell Luka Doncic, quit arguing with the officials. Get your butt back on defense. He's costing them 2 or 3 possessions every period because they're playing 5-on-4. If you get fouled, they're going to call foul. If not, they're not. But you not playing defense is costing your team at least 2 or 3 buckets per period. That's what I see when Luka's sitting there arguing. Get back on defense. Let the coach call for the fouls. That's just my story, but if you can't get your supposedly best player to listen to that, then he's going to cost you this series also. That's my opinion. OKC is good because they're more disciplined. Luka Doncic has no discipline. He has none. And if he doesn't change his ways, they'll be losing this series. If he gets back on defense, they'll win this series. But that's my story, and I'm sticking with it. Well, even with a hoarse throat or a frog in my throat, I'm going to tell you something. I'm doing something called the commercial. I'm trying to do the best I can. I'll try to get into Major League Baseball Power Rankings also, because I love giving out my thoughts on Big C's Major League Baseball Power Rankings, and I want to do that as well as I can, and it's just my opinion, and everybody has one. But I'm working on an infomercial with Big C Sports Podcast and the RDC team. I just got another great endorsement today from oh my God, it's a Council of Women in the city of Oakland, with the reference of the great Helena Straughter, and who was endorsed by the great Congresswoman Barbara Lee. But these women and these church groups are looking for long-term care solutions for their seniors, because a lot of them don't know the missing link. Well, we have the missing link with Big C Sports and the RDC team. And even if my voice doesn't hold out, I might meet the missing link. Cough drops. I can only eat so many cough drops. How many licks does it take to get to the center of a cough drop? Probably about 995. I know I licked it that many times. But my voice, I got whatever it is, raspy voice, I got to keep going because the show must go on. But I'm going to do my commercial. Unlike most commercials, they take 29 takes and they take the best one. I don't take 29 takes. I do 1 take. And if I make a mistake, you hear my mistake. If I don't make a mistake, then you don't hear my mistake. I like putting that stutter piece in there too. That makes it for the sound effects, the stutter. Stutter pixie. It's a sound effect. It's okay. Oh, I think that medication's made me loopy, but I'm gonna get through the best way I can. Ready, set, go. I'm going to give a quiz after I'm done, so pay attention. A guide to protect, preserve, and transfer wealth. Resource Development Consulting, Inc., in conjunction with the law office of Scott Thibodeau and the law office of George Jones, Esquire. The Missing Link, Long-Term Care Solutions, by the book, over 3 decades of experience helping seniors get their benefits. Medicare and You, Taking Care of Tomorrow, and California's called Medi-Cal. Now, why would we deal with the RDC team, Big C? Because your family and spouse can avoid the spend down for nursing home costs. Find out your options, 800-772-8624, 800-772-8624. Our promise to you, specialize to navigate and maximize long-term care benefits, protection of your assets without a spend down. All paperwork and communication with all government agencies are handled by our staff of entitlement specialists, ongoing consulting to provide updates as necessary, benefits, skilled nursing facilities, prescriptions, medical equipment costs, and more. Do you know anyone dealing with skilled nursing facilities? Do you know anyone that's ever dealt with prescription medications? Do you know anyone that's ever dealt with medical equipment costs and more? Not only that, protection of your assets, including your home, thereby allowing you to leave a legacy for your family. That's important, avoiding the nightmare of debt brought by the government's estate recovery program called probate, which can be 10 to 40% of your assets. If you don't have a trust together, believe me, the probate, they love you. They love taking your assets. You got to make sure you have your assets protected. Is that Aflac? No, Aflac's the duck. That's gap insurance. They don't protect your assets. RDC protects your assets. And we don't have ducks for commercials. We eat ducks, if that makes sense to you. And then a one-time processing fee versus monthly insurance premiums for the rest of your life. You got to give that some praise. I'm not done yet. As I say, I'm not done yet. I'm going to say RDC Consulting Inc. Asset Protection, in conjunction with the law office of Scott Thibodeau and the law office of George Jones. And then what do we offer? Protection, insurance coverage required by law, general liability, workers' compensation, lawyers specializing in living trust, Medicaid or Medi-Cal, planning for long-term care, avoid probate, life insurance, veterans benefits, aid and attendance, pre-planning and avoid the look-back period, fixed assets, bank account, checking account, savings account, money market, certificates of deposit, life insurance with cash values, fixed index annuities, variable assets. You got to know about that as well. Real estate is always big. Qualified money, IRAs, 401ks, other investments, avoid capital gains. You buy a house for $100,000, and then in 1 year, it appreciates to $1 million, according to some real estate brokers trying to get a sale. That's a $900,000 capital gains tax. You avoid that with the trust. Over 3 decades of experience. Attention, business owners, find out your other options to protect what your insurance does not cover. 800-772-8624. Oh, my insurance covers everything. Well, if you do, just give me a copy of your declaration page and we will see. 800-772-8624. That's 800-772-8624. You can give that some praise, even with the frog in my throat. I'm able to tell you about the RDC team and the commercials. Well, we know you told us about the RDC team and the commercials, Big C, but who endorses you? Well, I'm glad you asked. Anyone that says do business with me, you want to know who endorses them? I'm telling you right now, Mr. George Jones, chairman of the California Black Chamber of Commerce, also California Black Chamber of Commerce Foundation. Mr. Leon Woods, resource development consulting, works with many of the top lobbyists in California. We have Miss Cheryl Brown. She's the chair of the California Commission on Aging. You can't get much better than that. She endorses the RDC team. Not only that, we have Mr. Ray De La Cruz. He's the CEO of Resource Development Consultant. Have the endorsement of the former CalPERS top legal mind, the late Robert Carlson, that endorsed the RDC team. Also, Mr. Alex De La Cruz, founder of American Veteran Benefits. He endorsed the RDC team. You have Charlton Curry, the co-chair of the National Black Wall Street Project. He endorses the RDC team. Also, business development consultant for RDC. That's important. I love saying that. We also have Double O, as part of the payout committee for the National Black Wall Street Project. Also, her own talk show called Economic Awareness Talks. Let's Eat. You can hear it on Access Sacramento. Google it. It's a great show. She also endorses the RDC team as a consultant. So that's my story. I'm sticking with it. I want to give that also praise. Give it praise, praise, praise. As I say, my throat has a frog in it, and it's an itchy frog. I feel like I followed a putty cat. What was that commercial? I think it's called Putty Cat. At the same time, I love talking about what we do with sports is a billion-dollar industry. Boys and girls sports is the foundation to this billion-dollar industry. And I love bringing that to you with Big C Sports Podcast. It's so important to me. I love doing that, and I love making sure that I bring up things that are important. Like I always say, a mind is a terrible thing to waste, and I don't want to waste my mind, and I don't want to waste my throat, my voice, no matter how itchy it is right now. But I want to pay homage to the California Reparations Task Force, because a mind is a terrible thing to waste, and I want to do my part. I want to say the chair, Attorney Camila Moore, she's brilliant. I love giving her praise. I want to give praise to Dr. Amy C. Brown, the vice chair. He's brilliant. I love giving him praise. He's also been on the Big C Sports Podcast. I want to give praise to California Senator Stephen Bradford. He's brilliant. I love giving him praise. I've also met with him several times in his office and also met with him at Reparations Task Force meetings. I want to give praise to Councilmember Monica Montgomery Steppe. She's brilliant. I love giving her praise. I want to give praise to Assembly Member Reginald Jones Sawyer. He's brilliant. I love giving him praise. I want to give praise to Dr. Shell Grills. She's brilliant. I love giving her praise. I want to give praise to Attorney Lisa Salter, or Lisa Holder. She's brilliant. I love giving her praise. And I want to give praise to Dr. Javon Scott Lewis, professor at Cal Berkeley. He's brilliant. I love giving him praise. And I want to give praise to Attorney Donald K. Tamaki. He's brilliant. Part of the California Reparations Task Force. I love giving him praise, and you can too. Give him praise, praise, praise. I want to take the time, before I get into sports, I want to let you hear from other legal minds on reparations and why reparations are not only the moral thing to do, it's the legal thing to do, and it's the right thing to do. And it's been done for descendants of Holocaust. You can Google the Just Act. United States Department of Justice making sure that reparations are paid.
Now, many of us have talked about reparations, and America must pay what they owe. And that message should continue. We should never let up on that. And one of the main reasons why we should never let up on reparations is because America did pay reparations for slavery, but it didn't go to the enslaved children of Africa that was brought over here and worked and toiled in this land for 246 years of free labor. Now, the reparations went to the slave owners. Yes, the slave owners got a reparation. Let's talk about that, because when they always trying to tell you that you don't deserve a reparation, if anybody didn't deserve a reparation, it was the slave owners. See, no matter what they do, they were lazy, they didn't want to do their own work, and then after the people leave off the cotton fields, they want to cry and act like they can't do for themselves. The government going to come in and actually reward slave owners. Now, back in 1862, Abraham Lincoln signed the bill emancipating, our people. And many of us didn't really find out, especially to down here into June 19, 1865 here in Galveston. That's something that we celebrate down here all the time in Juneteenth. But he wanted to ease the pain of those slave owners. So he created the District of Columbia Emancipation Act and paid those loyal to the Union up to $300 for every enslaved person. Understand that. Now, if you translate that money into modern standards, I had found a calculator that was all the way up to 2018. Paid $7,439 per slave. What this slave owner got back then. A reparation for his torment, rape, pillaging, free labor. He was paid because our ancestors were freed. My great-great-grandmother and grandfathers were on the slave fields in Louisiana. So that means that those slave owners could have got compensated as well if they were loyal to the Union. Once Lincoln put this act in, you had about 1,000 claims come to the federal government from slave owners for claiming up to 3,000 slaves. Now, one slave owner claimed the most for 69 slaves. At that time period, valued at $18,000. If you flip that to today's terms, it comes out to $447,000. So getting close to $500,000 for 69 slaves at that time period. So they was getting all kind of reparations. And these slave owners were paid. and nothing was said. The African who has been released and now here in the U.S. in that time period, we were not citizens at all. This is way before the Dred Scott case or whatever. So we were still toiling in this land by ourselves, trying to do for ourselves, build for ourselves, put our families together after being enslaved, and yet they're getting compensated. Then you had things like the Devil's Punch Bowl in Mississippi, where Union soldiers got 20,000 black people and put them in that concentration camp and worked them to death. We covered that here on this channel, because one thing that they try to do in the American indoctrination system, they try to put everything on the Confederates. They're saying, oh yeah, it was the Confederates, they were slave owners and everything on the Confederate. But they don't talk about the Union slave owners. They don't talk about their participation in slavery. They constantly keep putting it on the Confederate States. The difference with the Confederate States versus Union, the Confederate States were better at it, basically, than they were. And they couldn't take that. So that was causing a problem with economics. Now you hear a lot of people, and you got to know your education and your history as well when they talk about even the Civil War. Understand that Civil War is about economics, and the economics has something to do with our ancestors. And our ancestors fought in the Civil War on both sides. They have never fought a war or conflict without us. The Revolutionary War was kicked off by Crispus Attucks, a brother. They didn't kick that off on their own. They went to our people and asked us to help them fight the British, and if we would help them win, they'll release us from slavery. This is why a lot of people who understand their history say they don't celebrate July 4th, 1776. They celebrate June 19, 1865. Because after we helped them get their freedom, understand we helped them get their freedom. They didn't do it by themselves. They have never fought nothing by themselves. I love to see the day happen when they have to fight something by themselves without the help of the black man and the black woman. But yet they always try to look down on black people when we are the complete history in this country. We built this country, fought in every war in this country. And you see the dealings that they have done to make sure to compensate them. Instead of having them pull themselves up by their own bootstraps, while Lincoln and say, hey, you had them slaves for a long time. Yeah, all right, it's time for you to get out there and start doing your own work. You had the free labor too long. Why was we should have to pay? But no, that's what happened. It's been program after program after program they have received for not only after slavery, when it was coming over here during slavery, it was getting free land. Hey, just come on from Europe. We'll give you free land in Indian territory. I covered that in a video called How White Americans Got Some Advantage. And I talked about every system that was put in place to give them advantage. And none of it came from pulling yourself up by your bootstraps. And
that's called the Homestead Act of 1862. Over 300 million acres of land was given to white people. And even white Europeans, they gave black Americans nothing.
Hard work. It was the federal government giving them everything. Now you fast forward to today, the federal government can't do what they used to do for them. And this is where the problems lie today. So they can't look to the government. They can't say, give me a job, give me a program, give me advantage. It's eroding away every day and they don't know what to do. Now, even when you look at slavery itself, and we know that in England, they had abolished slavery before the United States. And even they compensated their slave owners. Now, they had 46,000 slave owners, and they paid them $26.2 million. So the reparations were paid not only in the U.S., but it was paid in England. So they made sure to take care of their lazy, good-for-nothing slave owners that never worked hard a day in their life. Free labor, and then you getting more money because you lost your hard workers. Then you talk about when the slaves fought back in Haiti, 1804, and how they kicked their butt big time. Tariq Nasheed had did a whole documentary on that. It's a good documentary. You guys should go check it out. And France had levied a large sum on Haiti, trying to cripple their economy. We knew this. France to this day is still neo-colonizing 14 African nations, have them with the CFA franc, a currency they don't even use. They don't know how to stay out of Africa. They can't do for themselves either. But they're supposed to be the superior people, but they can't do anything by themselves. Usually someone's superior, don't need no one's help, right? At that time period, an overwhelmingly majority of whites felt that slave owners deserved reparations, but not the enslaved Africans. They didn't deserve anything, even though they did the work. Now, the only thing that they also supported was a trip back to Africa. So they allocated $100,000 in government funds to take our ancestors to either Haiti or Liberia. And it was $100 per person to do so. And they said it rarely happened. So they didn't even really exhaust those funds. So we had Reuter on here the other day. She said that her family was one of the ones that took advantage of going back to Liberia after slavery. So they could have sent us all back, really. We have no rights. We were no citizens or anything. And they did not send us back because, once again, they needed black people. They knew that. They're not silly. They haven't known a day without black people. And this is why they get bothered when we start talking about doing for self and fixing our issues and putting our family back together and not focusing on what they care about, not looking for their validation and not looking for their opinion and don't care about it. That start bothering them because they have been so intertwined in black people's affairs that they don't know how not to be. They haven't been that way with Asians or Arabs or Native Americans or Hispanics. It's been us. They've made billions and trillions of dollars off of us, not other groups of people, us. So when we start talking like that, that really bothers them. They'll call you every name in the book when you want to start doing for yourself and getting your act together. But this is the thing. Based off of what we know and what Abraham Lincoln has done, it gives you more of a right to talk about reparations. You should pay money to the descendants of the lost children of Africa because we built this and we deserve to be compensated for labor like anyone else should be compensated for their labor. Don't let no one tell you that you shouldn't speak up about reparations. When you start looking into the history and see what they have done to protect them and make sure they had and they didn't have to work for it, you shouldn't listen to nothing they would ever tell you on the guise of hard work. Because you just look at the history, they never had hard work. It was always a welfare. Because all this is considered a welfare payment. You know how they say you sit on your butt with welfare, collect a free check, and don't do anything? That's exactly what happened to them. They've been welfaring it up ever since they've been here. And the moment you get a piece of welfare as a problem, at least anything you have done, you earned it. I'm the last person going to be hearing them talk about some welfare about black people. Please. We'll correct black people when it comes to that welfare because we don't understand the mentality of that. We don't want to advocate that because welfare and the way it's guised up is to be in poverty. So we don't want our brothers and sisters in poverty, but you can't talk when all you receive is welfare. American indoctrination system, they don't want to teach you these things. They don't want you to know the truth of what happened. They want you to think that, oh, Abraham Lincoln freed the slaves and, oh, he was so great and, you know, that's it. They don't want to tell you how Lincoln paid slave owners. They want to tell you that. They want to tell you what the Union soldiers did to black people. They ain't want to tell you about shipping us back to Liberia or Haiti. They don't want to tell you about that either. The whole school system is set up to indoctrinate us into an extreme propaganda of white supremacy. But leave me a comment, let me know what you think about this particular story. Keep fighting for reparations, ladies and gentlemen, because we have a right. If the federal government can pay slave owners, they can pay us. Somebody.
If that's a lot to digest when you think about reparations and how important it is, I also want to just mention today some sad news that Reverend William Lawson, a civil rights leader who worked with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., he passed away at 95. He passed away Tuesday. And he worked with Dr. King during the civil rights movement by setting up the local office of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, an organization that was led by the late Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And the Reverend Williams Lawson founded Houston's Wheeler Avenue Baptist Church in 1962, and he served as its pastor for 42 years. Think about this as we talk about reparations. The Reverend William Bill Lawson, a longtime pastor and civil rights leader who helped desegregate Houston. He helped desegregate Houston and worked with the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. during the civil rights movement. He was 95 years old. And Lawson's, his longtime church, Wheeler Avenue Baptist Church in that Texas city, announced on his website that he had passed away on Tuesday. And he's completed his time of service here on earth and is now enjoying eternal rest, the church said in its announcement. But I got to tell you this, when you have people who've done a lot in life and then they're gone. He was an advocate that talked about ending segregation, and they fought for reparations, and they never got it. Before I get into sports, as long as my voice holds up, I'm going to let you hear one of the greatest speakers in the history of the United States.
About handouts and how these right-wing memes, these Republican memes, have infiltrated the Democratic debate to suggest that, ending welfare as we know it, all those kind of things are somehow, great and noble things, when we're not dealing with the underlying problem, which is that there's no economic opportunity there because of insane trade policies and because of Reaganomics. And Martin Luther King spoke to this. Jim and Shane, this is clip number 4. Martin Luther King spoke to this sometime back in the early 60s. And I thought this was a really interesting quote. Here he is.
The problem. At the very same time that America refused to give the Negro any land, through an act of Congress, our government was giving away millions of acres of land in the West and the Midwest, which meant that it was willing to undergird its white peasants from Europe with an economic floor. But not only did they give the land, they built land-grant colleges with government money to teach them how to farm. Not only that, they provided county agents to further their expertise in farming. Not only that, they provided low interest rates in order that they could mechanize their farms. Not only that, today many of these people are receiving millions of dollars in federal subsidies not to farm, and they are the very people telling the black man that he ought to lift himself by his own bootstraps. Now, this is what we are faced with, and this is a reality. Now, when we come to Washington in this campaign, we are coming to get our check.
From his speech, The Two Nations of Black America. And it's absolutely brilliant. And the next time some white person talks about, well, I pulled myself up by my bootstraps and my family did too, especially the Bundy boys. I mean, here's Martin Luther King, the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., talking about how basically whites stole the West from the Indians with the complete, and didn't just steal it. I mean, murdered them murdered the Indians in the process, and did not give any of these benefits to African Americans for 100 years in this country. It's a strong case for reparations or some variation on it, for rebuilding our cities, for doing right after having done wrong for so many centuries. It is a very, very strong case for that.
In your life, I love talking about reparations because it's necessary and it's happening.
America has a moral obligation, at best, to acknowledge the ills of slavery. Reparations is the key to unlocking opportunity for African Americans in not only San Diego, but across California.
Monetary compensation for descendants of people who were enslaved in the U.S. We're taking a close look at new developments in proposed reparations for Black Americans and the quest for social justice.
The possibilities of the acknowledgement of the pain and suffering that our ancestors went through that trickled down to us through institutionalized racism is more real now than it has ever been.
Thanks for joining us. I'm Monica Dean. It's Black History Month, and one of the topics that has made headlines recently is reparations. 2 years ago, California assembled a first-of-its-kind task force to take a look at reparations for slavery. Opinions over government compensation for this and how it would work are varied. NBC San Diego's Kelvin Henry joins us with more on what that task force found and why the people that you spoke with say the time to act is now.
And Monica, this is a centuries-old debate that now has new life, and there are things we know, like why people are speaking out in support of reparations, but there are things that we don't know, like where this conversation and policy proposal will end. I can tell you this journey has been personal, eye-opening, and informative.
So my name is...
Slavery's legacy lives on, and so does the fight to right the wrong. For the last 2 years, the state of California has been researching reparations for Black Californians. California formed the nation's first statewide Reparations Task Committee. The committee was made up of 9 people, including San Diego City Council member Monica Montgomery Stepp. After more than 2 years of research, fact-finding, and public hearings, the task force on June 29, 2023, released a much-anticipated report. The report to state lawmakers included recommendations for how the state should make up for the history of racial violence and discrimination against Black Californians. For some, a large part of reparations is repairing the wrong through financial payments. Now, the task force did not take an official stance on an exact number, but the total could amount to billions of dollars. For many, they hope the exploration of reparations does not become another example of lawmakers offering false hope. How do you think the conversation has trended over the years?
Disappointing. The conversation has started, but then it's stopped. Distractions. So many other events occurred.
Ellen Nash is the chair of the San Diego chapter of the Black American Political Association of California. Now, we linked up with Nash and others to discuss why reparations are important.
Reparations are so important because it rights the wrong that we were treated in terms of coming here as slaves to this country, and how we were treated, the worst of the worst kind of slavery that you can happen to an individual. We were not even treated as humans. We were property.
And why the time for action is now.
This report, it's evidence-based, it's data-driven, it has the facts, it's not emotional.
History, both national and local, is important, and at the heart of this conversation. California was not a slave state, but more than 4,000 enslaved people were brought to California between 1850 and 1860 alone, typically by plantation owners to work in gold mines and more. Despite California being established as a free state, there's a history of mistreatment of groups and people, from Japanese internment camps in the 1940s, in which those mistreated received a total of $4 billion in reparation payments, to the 1937 anti-Okie law, which made it illegal to bring a, quote, indigent person to the state.
It's just a place where many of the first pioneers of San Diego are buried.
This is San Diego's Mount Hope Cemetery. Yvette Porter-Moore, a local genealogist, wanted to meet us here. And now when we asked her why, she said this is her favorite place to visit because of all of the history that lives here.
Nathan Harrison was buried in this location in 1920. However, he did not have a headstone. It was an unmarked grave. But there was a gentleman who was a historian. He was doing some research, and he located where Nathan Harrison was buried.
Yvette says Harrison is a good example of how systemic racism over the years impacts the lives of Black people in California and the nation.
During the time that Nathan Harrison came to San Diego, he homesteaded on the property of Mount Palomar. And during this time, a lot of African Americans did not own property, but this man did. And because of the color of his skin and who he was not able to pass on his land to his descendants.
According to Yvette and many others, Nathan Harrison is just one of many examples of why this conversation is critical.
Reparations, it ain't new.
Nash highlights the conversation is not a new one, but a detailed report outlining how reparations would reverse the damage of slavery is. The Assembly member Shirley Weber, who is from San Diego, spearheaded the push for reparations, and Ellen Nash says that's the push that was needed.
And they're strong supporters of reparations.
Despite the long road to get the conversation started and a commission off the ground, there are still a lot of questions, notably the dollar amount, who is eligible, and how the money would be distributed.
The idea that you can do reparations to repair the relationship between the descendants of the perpetrators and the descendants of the victims, to me seems a really attractive idea.
Meet UConn professor Thomas Kramer.
My view is that reparations, an initial reparations payment, is a beginning of a conversation, not the end of a conversation. It's the start of really taking a serious look at ourselves and at our society, and going into detail about the wealth gap and its origins, and making up for those aspects of the wealth gap that are due to slavery or racial discrimination.
Many experts say the figure could be a whopping $800 billion, but despite the large number, Kramer says it is only a drop in the bucket for the hundreds of years of torture and pain.
Of course, you cannot repair the full amount of damage because there is pain and suffering, there is generations of poverty, there is lives lost. There is no price tag that you can put on a life or on a lifetime worth of freedom lost.
Professor Kramer was one of the experts the task force brought in to quantify the pain and suffering, and now that effort was difficult.
Hi, my name is Ron. Investigate individual atrocities and estimate those atrocities for which we could find a direct link to the state of California, and then estimating losses from there.
The effort narrowed in on a few atrocities, but finding the data for a handful was a challenge. The data was either not kept for each event, or was lost or hard to trace. Despite the challenges, they were able to secure enough data to put the hard puzzle together. This is not just work for Kramer, but he has a personal connection to the topic of reparations.
I always hoped I would be able to tell a Holocaust survivor how ashamed I felt about our history. And of course, never thought that this would ever happen. But then I met a Holocaust survivor who had relocated from Israel to my native Germany, of all places. And eventually I learned from him that he was the recipient of a reparations pension.
That personal story is why Kramer says this is all ultimately about the impact reparations can have on the average person's life. Kramer says reparations are actually quite common and sometimes ironic.
Reparations for other injustices are actually quite common. For example, the United States paid reparations to slave owners in the District of Columbia when slavery was abolished. Great Britain, France, Haiti, the nation of Haiti paid reparations to slave owners for the loss of their property due to the abolition of slavery. We face a strange phenomenon here that when reparations are paid to African Americans, suddenly there is a great reluctance to pay the debt that morally exists.
Reparations, let's get it done.
Jacqueline Clark is personally invested in this conversation.
I live in Lemon Grove.
And so much so, she spoke at a task force meeting.
The possibility of this happening is more real now than it has ever been. The possibilities of the acknowledgement of the pain and suffering that our ancestors went through that trickled down to us through institutionalized racism is more real now than it has ever been.
Chairperson of the Black American Political Association of California. Ellen, thanks for being with us.
Sure. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
We have a lot of ground to cover together. So, Kelvin, we've now heard this big report released from California's task force on reparations. And really, this is a huge step forward for this topic.
And now, Monica, it sure is. And you've reviewed that report. And now talk to us, Ellen, more about why you believe now is the time to act.
I believe now is the time to act because the data speaks for itself. African American folks are at the bottom in every category, from education
economic development. And now on top of that, with the flooding, you can also see the obvious environmental justice piece that is now on display to the entire world in terms of what's happening here with our residents here in Southeastern and San Diego, particularly African Americans and people of color. So it is a time to act now. And that is so important because Black people are suffering, cannot afford homes, are not getting a decent quality education. My young people like myself, my grandkids and young people, my kids are moving out of San Diego because they can't afford the cost of living. So the time to act is now. And I appreciate that during Black History Month, we're bringing this American history to the attention of the country.
We picked 5 atrocities. We looked at health disparities from environmental racism, and we looked at housing discrimination. We looked at mass incarceration due to the war on drugs, and loss of value of businesses. And then we also wanted to look at property takings, property takings from disproportionate property takings from African Americans when infrastructure was built in California. Often Black neighborhoods were targeted specifically for such projects and properties were taken. But we could not find data to actually come up with estimates. This is, again, research that needs to be done urgently.
And of course, I don't have an answer to it, but it is important for us to consider the dollar amount. And we, at least the $800 billion is only a drop in the bucket. And we're going to, yes, as Californians, we're going to have to make some sacrifices. But again, we're all residents of California, and we also need to live and thrive and also enjoy a quality of life here in California like other communities. And so the sacrifice that has to be made on the part of our elected officials, on the part of the community itself, it will be well worth the investment. I like the idea of other forms of compensation around housing programs, down payment assistance programs, investing in education for African American kids. An example of that would have been the bill AB 2774 that was not successful, but it did demonstrate based on data and evidence that children of color, particularly African American children, are not being educated. And if we could get a form of payment directly to the schools on behalf of those children, we could see an academic improvement. Also in business ownership, we need to encourage more investment in business owners, starting from the ones that are even home-based businesses, giving them the roadmap and the resources in order for them to elevate and broaden their business opportunities in order for them to be full-fledged business owners. I think here in San Diego, for instance, looking at even franchise owners. I think we have 1 or 2 right here in Spring Valley. Our own, one and only Chick-fil-A is owned by an African-American woman. We need to expand the Starbucks ownerships, the Chick-fil-A ownerships, the McDonald's ownerships. We need to expand all those so that opportunities for African-Americans can also thrive and have the wealth that's needed.
Ellen, do you believe reparations are the answer? Basically, how would this impact people and families going forward?
I think reparations is the answer if it is administered fairly and equitably with guardrails around it in terms of financial literacy, investment opportunities. So there would have to be, whatever the monetary offer is, it would have to come with education, 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 because it is about creating generational wealth. Mm-hmm. Home ownership has never been truly valued by lots of African Americans because they were not truly educated. So, for instance, when a relative died or a parent died, the children would just automatically sell the property. But there should have been more educating on how they can take that property and also create generational wealth. So it starts with the basic framework in terms of educating African American families and children and their generations after importance of creating generational wealth through home ownership, investments, business ownerships. Everything that generates money should be an education piece that goes along with it.
This new groundbreaking innovation.
If reparations doesn't happen, you're saying that it was okay that American slavery happened to the degree that it happened. So being able to have that mental lifted to say, okay, you acknowledged it, and now you're paying us reparations like you did every other group that suffered harms and ills from society. America has a moral obligation at best to acknowledge the ills of slavery.
I am a product of affirmative action. Affirmative action was the window that really could have opened up the whole conversations around reparations, because the current system is not designed to include African Americans. I'm talking about the entire system. So social justice has the piece in order to frame the fact that we live in California where a system needs to be redesigned that also includes all people of color, particularly addressing the needs and the acknowledgement around reparations for African Americans in this country. And we received a glimpse of what that would look like when affirmative action was the policy here in California.
And now, Ellen, talk to us a little more about the local impacts right here in San Diego to these communities and throughout the state.
In terms of reparations?
Yes.
Locally, it would just, let me just say this. I appreciate you, Monica and Kelvin, for even taking the time and Channel 7 to even have this conversation, to acknowledge the importance of reparations for African Americans. What you do is you give us hope, you give us appreciation. You're now communicating with the masses of people about our plight as African Americans coming to this country as slaves. It is a benefit to all residents of California, and particularly on the local level. It impacts our curriculum in our schools. It impacts our conversations around the dinner table. So in all spaces, at the cafe, the whole conversation, particularly now that we are in Black History Month, is giving us hope in terms of continuing this conversation around the importance of reparations as it relates to addressing the harms of our ancestors who were brought here as slaves.
And now, Monica, I learned about the contributions of Black Americans here in the state of California. And now, even though California was a free state, the contributions are enormous, even dating back to the work of Black Americans helping to keep the gold mines operational.
Ellen, let's look ahead to the future. This report's been published now. What's next? What are the big hurdles that you see in our future?
What's next? We have the report. That, like you said, it was over 1,500 pages or more of a document that now will move from the committee where my current board of supervisor, Monica Montgomery, was a part of. It's moved from that task force into the legislative branch, and that will have to be taken up there. As you know, that's a process. It's going to be a hurdle, but the hurdle can be overcome if we go on an educational campaign among the residents of California. That's the piece that's missing. So during Black History Month, BAPAC, we're going to be talking a lot about reparations and about the history of this country and how important reparations is. We're launching a podcast. And so we need to get this information constantly out there. If we don't, if we continue allowing the distractions to occur, and not really focus on moving this information and educating our residents, then it's going to fall by the wayside. It's a political animal. We're going into 2024. We know that. And this conversation and the questions need to be asked of our elected officials and the candidates that are running for office. Do you support California reparations?
Well, as you hear, that's my thoughts on reparations, not just mine, but many other people as well. Even though I lost my voice, I'm doing the best I can to keep elucidating the matter on reparations. We know it's necessary, and we know it's something that's going to happen in California, because I believe there are a lot of good people, lawmakers, as well as citizens that want to do the right thing when it comes to reparations. That's my story on it. Also, when we talk about getting things done now with Big C Sports Podcast, I'm so happy that so many things are happening that are being referred to me. United Seniors of Oakland wanted to have conversations with the RDC team about long-term care entitlements and how people can get help. 800-772-8624. 800-772-8624. I love doing that as much as I can. While my voice holds up, I'm going to close out today's show with some more thoughts on reparations. Also, I love paying homage to my family legacy, my great-grandparents, my grandparents, my parents, my brothers and sisters, and my beautiful children. And I really do appreciate just the thought that a lot of great legal minds are coming together to talk about liberty and justice for all as we separate reparations now, reparations forever on the Big C Sports Podcast. I'll leave you with this thought.
President Andrew Johnson, however, reversed the order and returned the land back to former slave owners. Without question, reparation packages for Black Americans should be designed, legalized, and distributed at the federal level. The United States Congress has a moral and legal obligation to provide reparations for the enslavement of Africans and its lasting effects. There is a $14 trillion bill on the table, but many doubt that it will ever see the light of day. But some cities and local municipalities are taking it upon themselves to apologize for slavery. Some cities and local municipalities are being proactive and progressive, making amends for both the local and federal government's role in denying wealth-building opportunities for Black people. And yet, there are other cities who are forming committees and task forces to determine how a reparations program can be funded and implemented. Here are 3 governments that are pioneering paths and making significant progress in providing reparation packages to their Black citizens. We want to spend a little time describing their proposals, since these are likely to become national models that your city or state could adopt. Number 1, the state of California. The state of California is taking some very bold steps. They have formed the first state-appointed task force in the nation to explore how a state could make reparations to African Americans hurt by slavery. And they have even gone as far as to design an online calculator to help determine what a reparation payout would look like. Number 2, the city of Evanston, Illinois. The city of Evanston, Illinois has already approved their reparations program. However, they are less focused on slavery and want to help reverse some of the damage caused by discriminatory housing policies and practices. Their program is believed to be the first of its kind in the U.S. and is a potential national model to help Black Americans build wealth through home ownership. Number 3, the city of San Francisco. San Francisco supervisors have backed the idea of paying reparations to its Black citizens in lump sum payments of $5 million. But it's just a proposal for now, with a list of qualifications where you must meet 2 of the 8 criteria to be eligible. But first, let's discuss how reparations are calculated. If your city or state follows the framework of the California Reparations Task Force, you may be provided with an online calculator to help you estimate the amount of reparations that you qualify for. This calculator uses certain criteria to determine the amount that you have lost due to generations and decades of systemic racism. Here are the 5 criteria that California is factoring in. Health harm. This is derived from the difference in life expectancy between Black and white residents. For example, in California, whites live 7.6 years longer than blacks, and therefore, this loss of time will be compensated for. Mass incarceration and over-policing. This is derived from average salary for a state employee because incarcerated individuals were forced to provide unpaid labor for the state, plus loss of freedom compensation. The time frame corresponds to the national war on drugs. Housing discrimination. This is derived from the homeownership wealth gap from state-facilitated discriminatory redlining, unfair zoning, and prejudicial home lending practices. Devaluation of businesses. This is estimated from missed opportunities and wealth built through black business establishments and the potential business profits. Unjust property takings. The task force highlighted several instances of eminent domain and unjust taking, but at the time of this video, the task force was not provided enough data to provide a specific calculation.
Well, even when I lose my voice, the show must go on. As I always tell you, follow Big C Sports 7 days a week, but live 5 days a week. 29 podcast platforms, streaming on 4 TV platforms. As I always tell you, reparations now, reparations forever. I thank you, I appreciate you, and I hope that you have a super fantastic day.